everything's above board, and I understand that the question isn't so much legality and so much more about morality in, you know, me advertising this event and showing people sponsors and all that stuff.
He even confirmed that he had no idea the money was donated since at least 2022.
I knew it was sitting there at a certain point, and that's what made me proactively go about it. Like, do you know when that point was? I was made aware in 2021 when the money hadn't moved yet. And that's what made me go, that's not cool. And that's when I got personally involved to move it. And
Did anyone
last year, 2022.
Yeah, did anyone tell you that the money was going somewhere before then? Were you being misled?
No. No one told me anything. I assumed that it was all going to a charity, and I assumed it correctly.
And in 2023, he actually held the Indieland event again and started naming charities. In fact, he made it pretty much a common identity that they were going to do whatever they can to donate this money to charities and make sure that the money given to them year over year was going to fight dementia and help assist in its research.
We are raising money for dementia research in honor of my late mom, trying to help folks who've been impacted by dementia, working with organizations like USF, FTT Association of America, Alzheimer's Association of America, and so many more.
Do our own version of that every year and kind of make it a cool celebration of games and raise money for charity. And so he was like, I wish we had a charity that we could donate to. And I was like, oh, I run my own charity called the Open Hand Foundation, and all the money that we aggregate, I started it when I was a young boy with my dad in honor of my mom who had dementia. And so we just every year we try and raise as much money as possible, and then we go work with Alzheimer's Association of America, University of San Francisco, Association for FTD, which is what my mom had, FTD. So we've worked with big and small organizations across the board, and he was like, it'd be really cool if we did a show all about raising money for people who are making huge headways in dementia research and prevention and all that stuff. And I said, yeah, I'd love to. We have the organization to do it. We just, need to come up with a theme. And so,
yeah, we're gonna have it probably next year. No promises, but so for those guys who don't know, we had a show last year, and it went great, but it was very expensive, and TOBG covered the cost of it. But we have kind of a rule of we want to make sure that as we do charity events that we're not costing the charity organization or really anyone outside of our awesome sponsors. The guys at FlyQuest who've been so supportive, we want to make sure that the money that we do raise actually goes to charity and is spent properly. And so, surprise, surprise, hosting a convention-like event is very expensive.
While in reality, the money was never donated, it sat in an account, losing its value to inflation, and of course, research was lost over time, because it never got paid to be done. So again, what we happened over here, initially looking into it, was the organization in writing even told us that they were actively looking for benefactors. So you cannot go on a charity live stream like Indieland and claim and misrepresent that your organization in the public view is working or, getting in touch with some of these named charity organizations, while at the back end you write to us and tell us that you're still looking for actual benefactors. Again, misleading statements, and it can constitute charity fraud in the public eye. If somebody goes out there in the public eye and tells you, hey, we're working with so-and-so, but you were just trying to find a charity to donate to all this time, that is basically a false statement. You are misleading people in the public, and that's where charity fraud gets into the mix. So again, since we made those videos, me and my update video, there was no public statement from either the Khalil family, Gerard, or even their lawyers sending out any correspondence to properly address this matter. So with each passing day, all the community can do is wonder, is the money even in the Open Hand Holdings account to begin with? Will it be donated to the charities that were name dropped on live streams and podcasts? And will it happen soon? These are the questions we ask. So yesterday, or maybe the day before, depending on how quick I can get this out and how vetted I can get all this information, my co-investigator, Carl Jobst, had released an update video where he dove further into what he now claims is a scam. Carl showed another event in the purview of the Open Hand Foundation, the Convenience Cup Challenge, which is hosted by Power Buying Dealers West. PBDWest.com, a company founded by Charles Khalil, Gerard's father, the man currently behind the books, the president of the actual organization listed according to their public filings. This was obtained from the state of California's versions of their public filings. So again, ladies and gentlemen, looking further into it, I briefly mentioned the Convenience Cup Challenge in my second update video regarding this topic. And it was the only other listed event next to the Indieland event out there. So again, to understand, Indieland was raising money for the Open Hand Foundation. And PBD West has also been raising money for, as you can guess it, the Open Hand Foundation. If you go to their actual website right now, ladies and gentlemen, the actual page in this case, you can find out that PBD West Convenience Cup, if you look into their pricing tiers for their sponsors, in the bottom right, you can see check payment to, basically write a check to the Open Hand Foundation. And of course, I'm going to block out the address and the numbers so I don't get privacy guideline strikes on my channel. But the idea here is you write checks to the Open Hand Foundation. So again, the money should be going to the Open Hand. So to understand, if you watched Carl's video yesterday, you'd probably realize that what appears on the surface is that there is a pretty glaring discrepancy in the revenue that is reported. It seems that the Open Hand Foundation may be underreporting their actual money, okay? Because there are more multiple sources, and it seems not all the money is properly accounted for. So what do I mean by that? It appears that when we look at the public filings, yet again, the money that they raise doesn't actually factor the golf tournaments. So especially towards the years of 2019 and beyond. So let's get down into it, okay? So throughout the various years when they hold this event, you can look at various photo streams going all the way back to like 2014, where they actually have some pretty large sponsors like Coca-Cola, Pepsi, Monster. You can see their actual main corporate logos dropped right on there, big brands. And what you can actually see here is various tiers that they have isolated these systems by. Now, according to their website, once again, if we look at the pricing for these tiers, you can see that sponsors can place their branding if they pay $10,000, $8,000, $7,500, $6,500, sometimes as low as $300 if you can't make it, but you just want to support these guys. You can have your corporate logo prominently displayed on course signage and the sponsor board. So again, ladies and gentlemen, it's just sponsors who basically pay to have this event running, and they write their checks to the Open Hand Foundation. And this isn't even including the raffles that are apparently listed on these foundations and various other sources of revenues, such as ticket sales. And again, this money should be reflected in the actual accounting, because when we look closer, it actually appears that the only sources of funding that appear are the Tiltify earnings for Indieland and actual donations and grants from recognizable private exempt parties, which we'll look into real quick right now. So when we looked into the actual filings and we looked into this event itself and those various photo streams where we saw all those sponsors and tiers listed, unfortunately, adding those figures up, we don't actually see it accurately reflected in the public filings, which, ladies and gentlemen, might I remind you, is not necessarily legal, okay? To understand, if all the money isn't accounted for in a charity, when you are raising money for the charity, the government considers that to be illegal. That can be fraudulent. That could be embezzlement. That could be mishandling of funds, which is a severe illegal no-no. So again, ladies and gentlemen, to understand why this money doesn't appear in the revenue sections for all of these filings accordingly is actually pretty alarming. And to understand, Open Hand actually does claim expenses for that golf tournament as well. In 2023, according to their expense sheet, they listed golf fundraiser expenses for $5,236, showing a direct expense relationship to these events. So another revenue source. So okay, I'm flashbanging you with a lot of information, but to understand, now we have to look at the revenues that are added up once again in these filings. Because now there's actually 4 key sources of revenue we have to take account of in order to get the full picture of the situation. One of them is obviously the Indieland raising expenses. So to understand, Indieland happened since 2018. And with Indieland, according to 2018 and 2019, there were some specific dollar amounts. So according in 2018, there was an amount of like $50,000. And when it came to 2019, there was obviously preliminary earnings based on this tweet of around $100,000. Of course, any amount after that isn't given into its specifics like these 2 years, where the only money that we have to go off of, on the record is from Tiltify. So if you go to Tiltify, they actually have these campaigns still up. You can view how much was raised. And of course, according to one of the event coordinators, Michael Barrett, you can actually see that this amount isn't necessarily, in some cases, the full accounting. Because according to Michael, there's also merch sales, there's also, earnings from YouTube, subscriptions, super chats, Twitch bits, donations, so on and so forth. That also has to get added into the accounting. But remember, these are all separate earning pools from Indieland. The Tiltify campaign does not include what would be earned on YouTube or Twitch. That's for Gerard to, make public to the audience and tell them exactly how much money was raised, and then add that to the open hand revenue, or I guess directly donated. But we know it's not donated because if it was donated, especially those YouTube and Twitch bits, how can you donate those to a charity but then not donate the rest of the money that was amassed in the Open Hand Foundation? Doesn't exactly make sense that way, and it's logical to conclude that that money is also probably still sitting in limbo. But it is unaccounted for. For instance, if you look at the Indieland Tiltify campaign, you can see that they raised $80,000, right? Like something around there. And yes, there are penalties. Depending on if you use PayPal or Stripe or variations of their payment services, the penalties or processing fees can vary. According to Tiltify, you could, in the worst scenario, face up to 5% processing fees from Tiltify. I'm going to be more charitable than Openhand and just apply the 5% penalty to their Tiltify campaign. So roughly, if you're looking at 80,000, you're looking at around $4 grand of processing fees. But we'll get into the specifics in a little bit. So
Thank you so much, kind.
That's
we are but poor farmers, and we have lost our land, but please accept this reward as a token of our appreciation.
Thank you so much, adventurer. Poor old Blanchy will be so happy.
Poor old Blanchy. Poor old Blanchy. I guess that's the quest I've got to do. Fucking birds. There's always some stupid bird right next to me. It's so annoying. Fucking birds all the time. Like flap, 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 flap in my ears. It's so annoying. Kill the curse me, God. Get him, Tiger. Yeah. Kill this white.
Actual revenue source in this situation is the actress known as Jamie Lee Curtis. Now, you've probably seen Jamie Lee Curtis on the Indieland streams, but Jamie Lee Curtis also runs her own charitable organization known as the Syzygy Foundation, whose filings are, as you can imagine, publicly available. So, with publicly available filings, yours truly decided to look at all of her filings, and I found that since 2018, she was actually sending money to the Open Hand Foundation. So for instance, this is the Syzygy Foundation right here, and you can see that on their actual key employees. You can see Jamie Lee Curtis Guest, Christopher Guest mentioned over here as the actual key employees. And inside here, Control F, we're gonna type in Open Hand. Whoa, look at that, boys! The Open Hand Foundation in the name of Karen Khalil. Now here you can see in 2018, she gave $20,000 to this as a charitable grant. Now, of course, this is again all public record. These are grants and contribution paid during the year or approved for future payment. And again, if you go to the year 2019, again, Control F, Open Hand, whoa, right here, charitable donation of $10,000. So again, if you go to 2020, you type in open hand, you'll find, whoa, $45,000 this year sent over in the name of Karen Khalil. So 2021, there's another donation as well too, and you can guess it. She sends the Open Hand Foundation $25,000. And of course, 2022, because why not, she sends, believe it or not, $25,000 yet again. What's another interesting catch for me over here is for the last time we looked into the Open Hand Foundation's public filings, they list themselves as a private exempt organization, as is Jamie Lee Curtis's own
Jamie Lee
Curtis.
I never thought Jamie Lee Curtis would come up in this story.
Filing from Skizizi, and they list the Open Hand Foundation as a public charity, which is interesting. What is it? Remember, there are actually key differences, and one key difference as I found was actually listed on this, LLP website, this legal blog, Foley and Lardner, who wrote, "Can a private foundation make grants to organizations other than public charities?" And it's true, private foundations may choose to make a grant to organizations other than a public charity. For instance, the private foundation you may want to make a grant to, another private foundation, perhaps the recipient is operating a charitable activity, like Indieland, like a golf tournament, you know it, so on and so forth. But this typically means that if a private foundation is making to a grant other than a public charity, it can. Technically, grants to entities other than public charities are taxable expenditures and are subject to a dreaded excise tax. However, a private foundation can make a grant to any organization for bona fide section charitable purposes as long as it engages in expenditure responsibility. So in this case, expenditure responsibility means that the granting private foundation must make an inquiry about the potential grant and guarantee. So again, the private foundation should have some level of diligence that the recipient would follow through and use the grant for the proposed purpose, such as fighting dementia, raising money for research against dementia. The private foundation must make the grant pursuant to a written grant agreement under a guarantee which must agree to use the grant only for charitable purposes and reporting requirements. For instance, the guarantee agrees not to use the funds for lobbying, propaganda, political purposes, other costs. The guarantee must deliver annual reports to the guaranteeing private foundation. So again, reading into this situation right here, if a private organization gives to another private
BRB guys, go to the bathroom.
Private foundation to private foundation, there's actually a lot of paperwork involved with making sure everything's above board. But maybe that's not even required if on paper it looks like you're giving to a public charity, despite that public charitable organization representing themselves on filing as another private organization. It's actually an interesting catch, and I want to know what the legality around that necessarily is. She was sending money, okay? So that is one revenue source right there. Now, the third revenue source is YouTube subs, donations, super chats, Twitch bits, subscriptions. Remember, in the Indieland streams, Gerard was very much upcoming and saying any financial contribution throughout YouTube or Twitch would be going directly to charity. That's not money that they were going to be touching. That's money that was going to charity.
All bits, all donations, all super chats, all YouTube memberships, basically anything that's tied to donating or subscribing in a financial way to us is going to charity. We're not touching any of it. It's all going for a good cause.
And of course, the fourth pillar, revenue-wise, is the golf tournament. All of these four, pillars is something that we're going to be adding up together and making sure it's reflected appropriately in the filings. If it's underreported, that's a problem, okay? That is actually a pretty massive problem, and one that I hope the IRS and the DOJ take a real hard look at. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to do some accounting over here, okay? So I isolated 3 years in specific that I'm going to be looking at very, very closely, and I'm going to apply those same 4 patterns or same pillars of revenue sources that I just talked about earlier. So these years in specific are 2019, you've got 2021 and 2022. I got to look at my notes because, ladies and gentlemen, this is going to sound a little bit convoluted. So let's actually start with this, okay? So if we look at if we look at how much money that Open Hand claimed to make in 2019, according to their full filings for that fiscal year ending December 2019, you'll notice that they made $123,816, okay? So in the six figures. Now, at this moment in time, you can actually look and confirm, thankfully, due to the Indieland tweet that we actually pulled from 2019, where they claimed that their preliminary total earnings were $109,418. Okay, so interesting right there so far. So if we add that, we can see that that's $109,000. And around this time, Jamie Lee's foundation, remember the second pillar of revenue here, her foundation, if we look at what she gave to Open Hand in, again, the fiscal year ending 2019, you can see that she ended up giving Open Hand $10,000, okay? Now, assuming that in their initial tweet they said they maybe added her grant in, which wouldn't really make a lot of sense, but I'm going to be charitable, okay? I'm going to be more charitable than Open Hand and say, sure, let's mix that in. Now, to understand, we haven't even looked at the golf revenue yet, right? So, even if you factored all of it and been charitable, the $109,000 subtracted from the current revenue right now gives them a difference of $14,398, okay? $14,398. That's the total amount of money that is still unaccounted for. So, does the golf charity account for the remaining almost $15,000. Or sorry, let's be specific, $14,398. Well, ladies and gentlemen, if we look carefully at the actual photo gallery for the 2019 PBD Convenience Cup, which, by the way, it is benefiting the Open Hand Foundation. And if we remember, according to their website, they were asking for checks made payable to the Open Hand Foundation. Now, granted, to be very charitable, that website is updated for 2023, 2022, a mix of both. But I have no reason not to believe that the checks weren't supposed to be written out if they're specifically benefiting the Open Hand Foundation. They had an account. I'm sure they asked everyone here to write the checks for this account. Now, if we look carefully amongst all these people having a good time, nice day out, they've got lunch sponsors, they've got people out having fun, and of course, inside these golf carts, if you look very carefully, they've got branding from Monster Energy, Dr. Pepper, Snapple, Coca-Cola. And it's interesting to isolate a lot of these anomalies out, because even if you go further, especially to like this section, you can see that Monster Energy and Rockstar Energy have their own actual tents. And their tents come with drinks too. So again, if we go to the second page here real quick, you can pick whichever monster you want. This is fully on them. They brought everything, their A game. This is an expensive event, okay? And of course, you've got dinner sponsors. So you've got two right here, Monster and Dr. Pepper, the Snapple group. So again, this is like corporate branding. You got Gerard over here, basically speaking to the rest of the pals out here. So if you look into the actual pricing list right here in the Open Hand site, once again, you can see that when it comes to the pricing tiers, one of them primarily says corporate logo featured on course signage, entrance banner, sponsor board, golf carts. Golf carts is only mentioned in the $10,000 tier, okay? Again, let me just scan this real carefully. So for instance, in this, you've got 1, you got 7-Up over here, you got 3, 4, Coca-Cola, you got 5 brands, okay? So again, ladies and gentlemen, you're looking at around $40,000 to $50,000. The tents alone, according to this pricing tier, fall under hospitality, which is $7,500. We saw 2 tents of the minimum, which is $1,500, okay? So again, ladies and gentlemen, that is tens of thousands of dollars. And again, if we look at our math once again here, you'll notice that before we had a difference of $14,398. There is still thousands, tens of thousands of dollars, and I'm lowballing, by the way, because you gotta understand, with an event like this, there's also raffles, there's other places where revenue is made. I am very severely lowballing, okay? Enough where I can confirm, at least based on how they've priced and what sponsorship deals they've put up. I have lowballed, and they are still, in the land of underreporting the revenue, which again is wrong. Because now the question isn't like, hey, is the money all there? Is how much money actually was raised? Because now we don't even have trustworthy accounting at this moment. So people have said over the course of this investigation that maybe this was just mismanagement. And the thing is, this makes sense if it happened maybe 1 year. But if this pattern, this same pattern, crosses to, let's say, 2021, 2022, which is what we're about to look into, at what point is it systemic, ritualistic, okay? At what point does it go from a simple mistake to something that is systemic? When something is systemic, it's more than just a mistake at this point, ladies and gentlemen. And again, there have been a history of lies from Gerard's side, especially with our interview to begin with. So the trustworthiness of this character and the entire organization, at least personally to me, is very questionable. But again, I'm not here to speculate. Let's go to 2021 and see if maybe money is also underreported there too. So in the years of 2021, ladies and gentlemen, if we look at the actual open hand filings once again, you'll notice that their revenue this year
Open
was
hand.
$136,695.
Open hand.
Okay, so this is the total amount of revenue that they raised. Now, there's going to be a few people that will say, Muda, what if the golf tournament cost so much money that they actually lost money or broke even?
Golf tournament.
Even if that was the case, first off, it's a shitty fundraising event if they're not actually able to raise money.
Why did
And
he
it
get
kinda
hurt
goes
so
against
badly?
Gerard's idea and his ultra principled stance of, I really want to support the right organizations, because his organization would literally fall into the exact organization that he never wanted to support if they're not able to make money on these extravagant events. And even if that is the case, if you have, let's say the golf event costs $60,000 to run, right? And it cost, and they made like what, 30,000? So $60,000 to run the event, but they made 30 grand. It wouldn't matter, okay? Because you would still see the $30,000 show up as part of the revenue, right? And the $60,000, if they chose to build themselves, or if they chose to take costs out of the charity, would be reflective. It would show up in the cost section. Remember, revenue is all the money you've made before you start factoring in, oh shit, it cost me more to run it, so now the revenue that I made, I'm actually going into the loss, okay? That's, again, the money should still be present in the revenue section. Anyways, let's go to 2021. So, Open Hand made $136,695. Okay, let's type that down. Now, this is the year when Tiltify started to actually be a thing, and they stopped giving exact amounts on Twitter or the YouTube channel, as far as I was able to see, and Carl. So with this, we went to Indieland 2021, and they mentioned that they raised $113,146. One also thing that I wanted to mention here was that it wasn't just Gerard's stream that was making money. You also had these other campaigns that were running too. So Barry Kramer, if you click on this, it appears that they were actually running their own campaign through Twitch, and everyone here was just basically pooling money for this thing. I could imagine the people here that aren't, belonging to the Open Hand Foundation from a director standpoint, they should be fucking pissed. But that's not the story here. So this raised $113,146. So I'm going to add that to the notes. And what I did also add here was subtracting 5% at max, right? So 5% of that is $5,657. We are adding the 5% loss just to be ultra charitable. Now, again, I want to just stress that obviously we're looking at these transaction fees. I don't want to make this video and then somebody's going to say that, oh, you didn't factor in a transaction fee. I understand how money works. Obviously, when you work with any of these charity fundraising services, they have their own fees on top. But again, reading what Tiltify themselves have said, obviously a transaction fee could be taken by a third party like PayPal, the Giving Fund, Stripe, Giving Block, depending on what your relationship with them is. But they say when we work with the charity and their payment account directly, so I would assume the Open Hand and then their actual holdings, that fee would be whatever their typical transaction fee is, depending on what they may have negotiated with that payment provider. When donations are made, 100% of the donation is then sent directly to the charity account in real time. So here they say Tiltify is paid a contribution fee for our technology and services. Charities pay a range depending on their plan with Tiltify. The average Tiltify makes from processing is currently less than 5%. So when they say currently less than 5%, that could be up to 5%, right? Now, depending on what your relationship is, that could be like 1%, 2, 3, 4, and 5. To be very charitable to the Open Hand Foundation, I'm just going to apply a flat 5% loss, because again, I don't know what their contract is. Maybe they could be paying less. But again, it wouldn't really matter. If the money goes over what they report revenue-wise, it's just bad. So I'm going to apply the 5% strike, just to be ultra charitable over here. There may be a little bit more processing fees applied. I'm not entirely sure there. But again, it can't be much more than the 5% that they're losing, right? Again, without exact specific clause that I can see in their contract, it's hard to exactly pinpoint how much more. It could be more than 5%, could be less. Depends on what it is, okay? So that's pretty much what we're getting down to. Let's get back to the analysis. Then taking away 5,657 gives them $107,489 with some change that should be sent to the open hand account. Remember, money that is outside the control of these guys, that, you know, they're not collecting checks, or Gerard's not taking money out of the YouTube or Twitch fees to pay for charity. This is money that is sent directly to the account. Tiltify wired this money over, because that is basically what is on their contractual side. They have to do this. Now, at this moment in time, Jamie, Lee Curtis's grant for this year, if you're under our foundation, was $25,000, right? Now, you might ask, but Muda, what if that was part of the Indie Land money, right? First off, if you look into the Indie Land charity, if you click on just Gerard's stream right here, the top donator is Miles Foxling for $5 grand. So this is money that, from what I have to assume, based on everything I've researched, this is money that is wired over to the Open Hand Foundation from Jamie Lee's foundation. So $25,000 gets added to the Tiltify money that they've gotten. So if you add the $25,000, you get $132,489, okay? So this is pretty close to the actual revenue, you know, a few grand off. Now, we haven't even calculated the golf money. Fuck, we haven't even truly calculated the Indie Land, merch sales, the ticket sales, the YouTube earnings, the Twitch earnings. Because remember, Tiltify doesn't touch any of that. That is money YouTube sends to Gerard or the One Video Game Company or whatever their firm is through AdSense. Same with Amazon and Twitch.
Thank you.
You can't just tell YouTube that, hey, I'm doing this charity event. Just, take a little bit of money out from my AdSense and just directly send it to Open Hand or whatever. YouTube doesn't give a shit. They'll tell you, here's your full money. You do what you have to do, dog. We're not getting involved. So this isn't even including money that should be sent over. This is just Tiltify raising cash. We haven't even touched the YouTube Twitch bits that Gerard would have to send over. Now, again, we are looking at a difference of a couple grand. So let's look at the golf tournament for 2021. So according to 2021, you got a couple gold sponsorships. So you got 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And if you look at the pricing tier, once again, gold sponsorships are $6,500 each. So you're looking at 6, and that would come out to $39,000.
Welcome, golfers.
Titanium sponsorships. I don't know what a titanium sponsorship is, because if you look again, like right here, I don't see titanium. So I'm not going to start assuming things, okay? Because clearly I'm not here to speculate. It's already bad enough with that $39,000 just with the gold, because if you add $39,000 to the current total, you're already over the revenue that is reported, okay? That's bad, okay? That is unaccounted for according to their events. So the player sponsorships, again, I don't know if they're actually billing for, just single players or event supporters because they have branding showed, but that's a few $100s, okay? Already, we're over, so it's not worth it. The diamond sponsorship is $8 grand.
You know who I think of when I think of all this stuff is Ralph. It sucks that Ralph hitched his wagon to this dude for the FPS podcast, and that always sucks when one of your friends turns out to be some shithead criminal or like a bot or something, or they're like lying or cheating on their wife or something dumb. It always sucks when your friends behave badly, And I feel bad for Ralph, because I think this is right about like when Ralph's big boom is.
I can't believe
and
the
the nice lady on that show. I don't know her name, but she's really nice. I like
when our
her.
home front is under so much
And
pressure, with
they
thieves
seem
coming
like,
from
and
Westfall
Jake
gnolls
Baldino.
approaching from the east and west, it's a wonder Stormwind itself isn't besieged. I see you've been busy. You have our thanks, adventurer.
You have other things. Why do you sound so soft? I'm just kidding. And so yeah, and like and I like the FPS podcast, though I think it's a boring podcast. It's hard for me to be to listen to their banter because they're like boomers, but to me they're like uninteresting, like consumer, like critics, like gaming critics. But I do like Ralph. I think he does a really good job. Like the kind of, like, you know, David Letterman, like, you know, like I didn't like a lot of those talk show hosts, for instance. Like I don't like fucking Jimmy Kimmel at all. But I still think he does a really fucking good job. And that's how I felt about Ralph. And it sucks that Ralph like hitched his wagon to this guy who might even, from what I just heard, go to jail. Maybe he might go to jail if his country prosecutes him, which I don't know. This sounds like more of an international mess than oh, I'm out here. Yeah, I'm like out here. I'm out of quests here. So I guess the next step is to walk to oh yeah, I guess I have a turn into Gulcher anyways. Yeah, and one in Stormwind. So I guess I'll go do that. I didn't know.
So you've got Cormark and you've got PBD West, which, as far as I understand,
this is charity fraud, and it's money laundering, and it's scam, and it's, you know, it's fraudulent transaction, and it's like a lot of nasty things involved all at once, designed to take advantage of rich people. And it's becoming a funny story that the streamers are latching onto because one of their own might have been ripping off poor Jamie Lee Curtis, who, from what it sounds like, was completely duped by this asshole Gerard, and like she and her husband Christopher Guest like dumped a bunch of money on him, like $1 million or something like that. He like got their fucking patronage or whatever you want to call it. And then he was like, I don't know what you want to call this, but I believe it's misappropriation. You always wonder what shadows lie underneath because it's weird. Like when I watched the FPS podcast, I was not happy with it. I thought it was boring. I thought they were critics, and they themselves aren't very, like, particularly good people, actually. I mean, I've never had a very high opinion of critics, you know. But that's just me. I think those who can't do critic. And so as critics, though, they're like the best we've ever had. I like them more than Roger Ebert or whatever, or Siskel and Ebert. And the lady is great. She's got no issues at all. Ralph's a shill, and we've caught him at it for years. He's definitely a fucking shill. And he pushes really dumb stuff and makes really dumb stuff happen, too. And so, you know, and that's okay. I don't care. He can use his power like that if he wants to. He's sitting in the chair. It's his, ooh, look, hey, I'm 38. I get to finally leave this zone. Yeah, let's leave this zone finally. I've been in this zone for what, 10 days or something like that, and I finally get to fucking leave it. It was such a fucking long grind. Oh my god. So now I have two places I can go. I can go to the desert, or I can go to or no, I'm going to the desert because the desert does not lag me, and I'll walk there too. I'll probably walk there. Yeah, I'll walk there and I'll fight. The desert does not lag me the way that Elite Lore will. Elite Lore has bad bump mapping, and with the paint the way it is, it'll lag out not only this client but other clients because that zone has a memory leak, and I don't particularly like going there unless I have to, which sucks because I should go there. But Right now, I think the Antique and Auxiliaris are perfect for me. I think they're like 38. I think that's it. I think they're actually 38. I think they will be EM to me right now. And those are really good because stacks of Antique and Pauldrons off the Auxiliaris, those sell well. They always sell well. There, and that would be some nice income. Even selling one stack for being there for several days or whatever would be a nice income because it's like another 25 grand or something like that. It's one of the camps where you can actually make, I mean, it's actually my farming camp. It's where I go to farm Final Fantasy 11. And on the last like 2 servers I was on, because the Pauldrons are always good money, and right next to them are spiders. And spiders drop spider webs. Spider webs are pretty much like the core of the cloth market. The like between silk and spider webs, that is like the core of the cloth crafter market. So, if you can be a source for spider webs, which is tricky to do because the server swallows up like 100 of them a day or something like that. It's the server's got a thirsty appetite for them, but you can't kill that many spiders, honestly, to produce like 140 spider webs each day. You'd have to sit there and kill spiders all goddamn day as like a level 75 thief with TH4, and it would have to be one dedicated person doing it to even make a dent in it. So the server doesn't have the spiderweb production that the people need. There's always there's usually like enough coming in where there's like, maybe between 20 to 60 for sale. But a stack of spiderwebs go for 15k gil something, usually. Not always, but usually. Between 15 and 24k. And the Antique and Auxiliaris drop the Antique and Pauldrons. Those are like between 19 and 28k, and that's really good money too. It's a long, slow grind, and on top of it, the travel to the camp isn't very fun. But I did at this point get used to it. It's not very cheap to teleport to Kuzats all the time because that's usually between 800 and sometimes 1400 gil. Usually, most times, because it's like kind of a more I don't know how the pricing is based on teleporting, but the higher the level and the less beastmen, or like if the beastmen own the nation especially, it's like really expensive to teleport there, and it's really expensive to set your HP at the outpost. So I don't know. I'm just thinking about this is all the stuff I'm thinking about. So I got to get to the desert, but also I'm like full of loot, so I'm gonna go drop that. I'm like legitimately full of loot. I might have even stacked out some stuff finally, or at least like another like Triumph bulb stack if nothing else. Like I think I have some money sitting there in my mog house. The drop rate on this server is fucking abysmal. I must have killed, what, 300, 500 mobs, and I didn't even get a stack of anything at all. I mean, I got some Triumph bulbs off all those, all the fucking, like the drop rates. Oh, stop running! You're bothering me. Where am I now? Oh my god! I thought it was like super far, but I hit a hill like right away. And so, I forgot what I was going to say. Antiquing is good money, but it's, the drop rate on Horizon is frankly, like, I don't know, maybe I just got used to Nozomi and Wings having, like, good drop rates and stuff. But I do not feel like or maybe, I don't know, maybe I was just always sub thief and I always had treasure hunter all the time. So the drop rates didn't feel that bad. But without thief, I feel like my drop rates are fucking terrible. I use my white mage sub so little. I mean, sometimes it saves my life though, definitely. But I use my white mage sub so little, it would be tempting to sub thief, but I think I've only got thief to 13. I don't think I could even reach halfway to the Beastmaster level that I'm at. So that's not a viable sub for me. I'll have to keep white mage, and I like white mage anyways. It's a good sub. Later on, you get Blink, which totally changes the job. Once you have shadows, like even if they're crappy Blink shadows, it definitely does change how the game works. It's like, it takes a while to cast that spell. It slows the game down. But you definitely get like this like leeway. You know, you can tank a lot better.
Company, so I don't know if they're.
And Blink's not that
paying-
expensive. It's expensive. It's like 30 mana or something. I forget. So it'd be like half my bar right now. If I was like, I've noticed that the more that I play 3 games, the less dedicated I am on each game. And like normally, I would go get Astral Rings. I would definitely, like, if I was dedicated to Final Fantasy 11 right now, I would do nothing.
Taking gold from our mines, then he's stealing from the kingdom. Bring the collector to justice, and bring me the ring mentioned in the pickup schedule you gave me. It may tell us whom the collector is working for. That pickup schedule says the collector is hiding out at the Brackwell Pumpkin Patch. You should search for him there.
Okay. You know, I think, so if I was serious, like I just, for like the last 5 years, I did Final Fantasy 11 too much. It's very, very difficult for me to be serious. Like it's just not a reality. Because what I would normally do is grind BCNMs for a really long fucking time, like a really long time, like for days on end. I would just grind like BCNM Wings of Fury until I had 2 Astral Rings. And that's what a completionist, or well, really like a good Final Fantasy player would do right now. But the walk to the fucking BCNM is forever. The challenge itself can't be interrupted. You can't alt tab, or you'll die. It's stressful. It's annoying. You can only do 1 orb at a time, and it's a long walk in between it's like a 10-minute walk each time. And the discipline to do that 10-minute walk is just not there. It's just not there. Even with a friend, it wouldn't be there. I'd be like, I don't want to do this, you know. And so that sucks. Like that's a reality for me. I I want those Astral Rings, and boy, another 80 mana right now, or is it? Yeah, I don't know what Astrals is. Is it 30? I think it's, or no, they're 25. I think an extra 50 mana right now would be insane. Like that would double my mana pool. But the difference is I barely use it as it is right now. All those years, I used to play not perfectionist or completionist, but definitely elitist and snobby. Only the best for me, you know? Only the best gear for me for the level. Always the grind. Always the fucking BCNMs for the loot or whatever. Like, only the best for me for a long time. And so then it's weird to accept that something has changed core fundamentally in my personality, that where like I will forego old grinds that I used to do, especially because they're still fresh in my goddamn mind. I don't want to do them again, you know? I just did them. I just did them on 2 other servers. You're back to hardcore. Oh yeah, what's up? What's up? Hey. Hey, yeah. Do a bit of all of it. Wasn't enjoying waiting for mobs. It's not good for the stream, just standing there waiting.
for their branding. But anyways, you're looking at $16,000. Okay, this is $8,000 each. So again, diamond 8,000. We see two, $16,000. You've got one platinum sponsorship from Ray's Coca-Cola Bottling, which is alone $7,500. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, adding all of that up, we are looking at again $62,500. All right, so again, if you added that to the total already, you are over the revenue that is showing up once again in the Open Hand Foundation. So again, going back to the idea of systemic patterns in the situation, these are 2 years where revenue doesn't appear to match up to the events that have been ran. And again, you might say, what if the golf costs too much? What if they're in the red with that event? Well, first off, you got to shit can that event, okay? And again, I'm lowballing every number for the golf charity because I am purposefully omitting actual sponsorships that we can see clearly, but because I don't have the price chart, I am just omitting them. Again, we're already over the revenues. It's bad enough, okay? That's the message I'm sending. We are looking at undocumented money according to these filings. Because, again, if these filings are to be correct, they have to be significant.
I think you're spinning your wheels here, buddy, and you kind of got the point across.
Sentimental value, needless to say, thank you for bringing this to me.
Here's H Bomber guy.
Your own well-being, not to mention the time it took to go all the way down to Westfall. You have my gratitude and have this as a token of my thanks.
Here's H Bomber guy with plagiarism at YouTube, and I've liked and sub to your channel. I'm going to plagiarize your video and put it on in the background while I fucking listen to, or while I play WoW, and I'm gonna listen to your fucking video and honor your struggle with plagiarism by essentially stealing your video. And I'm terribly sorry, but that is the era that we live in. I don't think you should put free content on YouTube if you don't want it to be played in the background of some nerd's video.
$37,000. Tell us the story.
I'm sure you're aware of it. I'll be right back. I want some Canada Dry.
In 1970, in Analog magazine, Harlan Ellison and Ben Bova published the short story Brillo. Ellison's one of the most famous writers in history, but Bova's no slouch. He soon became editor of Analog, where he was beloved and won the Hugo Award for Best Professional Editor 6 times. This isn't one of his. He accepted this one on behalf of George R.R. Martin, whose career he started. George couldn't make it. He was running a chess tournament at the time. Writers used to have fun. Now we just complain about Twitter. On Twitter, Brillo was about the world's first robot police officer. His name's Brillo because Brillo pads are metal fuzz. That's pretty good. This is one of the earliest stories in fiction about a robot cop, a commonplace trope today, and soon in real life. It wasn't the first example. The most famous earlier one would be Isaac Asimov's Caves of Steel. Remember this, it will come up later. Ellison and Bova thought the idea had legs and decided to adapt it into a TV show. They pitched the idea to a few companies, including NBC, where an executive named Terry Keegan said no. They later showed Brillo to Paramount, where the head of development, Terry Keegan, he'd recently been hired there, said no. The same man passed on the same pitch twice at 2 companies. Clearly not a fan of the robot cop idea. 6 months later, Terry Keegan sold a show called Future Cop to ABC. It's a show about a robot cop.
He's an android, a robot, the perfect cop.
Our boys realize they've been ripped off.
When I saw it, I wanted to file immediately. My attorney said, forget it, man. He said, 90% of all plagiarism suits, the plaintiff loses. Besides, these guys will kill you.
I missed some of this, so I'm gonna restart. I'm sorry.
$37,000. Tell us the story briefly.
Thank you, H Bomber guy, for the extra comment. I'd like to sub to your channel.
Harlan Ellison and Ben Bova published the short story Brillo. Ellison's one of the most famous writers in history, but Bova's no slouch.
Love Ellison.
He soon became editor of Analog, where he was beloved and won the Hugo Award for Best Professional Editor 6 times. This isn't one of his. He accepted this one on behalf of George R.R. Martin, whose career he started. George couldn't make it. He was running a chess tournament at the time. Writers used to have fun. Now we just complain about Twitter. On Twitter, Brillo was about the world's first robot police officer. His name's Brillo because Brillo pads are metal fuzz. That's pretty good. This is one of the earliest stories in fiction about a robot cop, a commonplace trope today, and soon in real life. It wasn't the first example. The most famous earlier one would be Isaac Asimov's Caves of Steel. Remember this, it will come up later. Ellison and Bova thought the idea had legs and decided to adapt it into a TV show. They pitched the idea to a few companies, including NBC, where an executive named Terry Keegan said no. They later showed Brillo to Paramount, where the head of development, Terry Keegan, he'd recently been hired there, said no. The same man passed on the same pitch twice at 2 companies. Clearly not a fan of the robot cop idea. 6 months later, Terry Keegan sold a show called Future Cop to ABC. It's a show about a robot cop.
He's an android, a robot, the perfect cop.
Our boys realize they've been ripped off.
When I saw it, I wanted to file immediately. My attorney said, forget it, man. He said 90% of all plagiarism suits the plaintiff loses. Besides, these guys will kill you. You'll never work in this town again.
They spend years finding a lawyer willing to sue a giant television conglomerate, despite the cost and the possibility of being blacklisted from working in television. In his deposition, Keegan claims he never read Brillo, an obvious lie. It was later discovered the memos proving he deliberately ripped them off had been burned. The jury found in favor of Ellison and Bova and awarded them $337,000 in damages, about $1.2 million today. Ellison used some of the money to put up a billboard across the street from the studio reading, "Writers, don't let them steal from you. Keep their hands out of your pockets." Or at least he said he was going to in interviews at the time, and later journalism claims it happened, but I can't find any pictures, which is a shame. Either way, they still made off with all that delicious money. Yum yum.
I've been waiting 4 years for this moment. 4 years. To tell other writers they can fight him and beat him.
Welcome to my inn, weary traveler. What can I do for
So,
you?
what's all that about? Okay, you know that trick video essayists use where they open on a semi-related example that sets the stage for the wider topic? It's a classic, I do it all the time. I wanted to open on a recent example of a writer winning a plagiarism lawsuit and getting their day in court. But there isn't one. This ancient case, which took place over a decade before I and Statistical News were even born, is still the best, most recent, and almost only example. Ellison and Bova are among the few writers to ever see financial compensation for their work being stolen. Oh, this always happens. Testing, 1, 2, 3.
A lot. I'm talking about a lot. Like a lot of The Simpsons were just movies. Just scenes from movies. That's all. Done in a cute, funny way. In a very, wonderfully adorable, kitschy way. Really funny and cute. But definitely mostly references to a lot of really famous Hollywood movies. And a lot of television is just that. It's just a lot of television, believe it or not, is just repeating movie scenes from movies. That's all it really is.
Seeable future.
Now, there's a lot of television that isn't like that, too. But a lot of really famous comedy television is mostly just making fun of really famous movies. Rick and Morty is that way. Simpsons were that way. Family Guy. South Park. South Park was a lot different, though, than a lot of them.
On here steals your work for money. There's not much you can do except talk about it. A few years ago I made a video with some examples of plagiarism and even covered a time I felt it happened to me. The guy in question, Lukey Poo, briefly posted a 10-minute response accusing me of overreacting before appearing to think better of the whole thing and deleting this along with the video copying me.
I watched your video, went through it piece by piece, and copied it because you're such an incredible YouTuber.
Thanks, Luke. Apology accepted. He has since rebranded his channel, recognizing the irony in presenting himself as a literal piece of shit, but his videos are still awash with plagiarism accusations, ripping off other YouTubers for hours at a time now, the only new sections being stuff about how homophobia's fine. Maybe the rebrand was a little too soon, but no authority took Luke's video down. He could have left it up, and people often do. You can spend ages on a unique video with an original idea, and a way more popular guy can rip it off, along with its thumbnail, get a bajillion views, and rake in the cash. On YouTube, if you have an original idea, if it's good, it won't be yours for long. The fact I'm making this video during one of the biggest creative strikes in history isn't lost on me. Other people's hands have never before been this deep in the pockets of creators. We need Harlan Ellison's billboard now more than ever. But I don't know how to rent a billboard and it sounds expensive. So instead, we're going to talk about plagiarism on YouTube, what exactly it is, why it's wrong, and the many unintended side effects. Only then can we begin to talk about what to do about it, or at least what I'm going to do to try to put some of it right. I'm going to use a few relatively well-known examples you might have heard of already, and some new ones I found just for this video. I could even ruin some of your favorite YouTubers for you. Apologies in advance. So, Let's start some fights. Part I. Philip.
What's going on, everyone? Thanks for
Phil-
clicking on the video.
Philip Mewson was a
Oh, never
YouTuber
seen
who reviewed Nintendo Switch
Difficult.
games and accessories and talked about Nintendo-related news. His videos were surprisingly well edited, and by that I mean they used way too many fancy transitions. I mean, they're not even hard to do, you just drag and drop them on your timeline and what? But when he applied for a job at IGN, his obvious mastery of a plugin everyone else also has, and existing channel with a decent size led to him getting picked as their new Nintendo editor. On August 6th, 2018, his review of Dead Cells went up onto the official IGN YouTube channel. But then on August 7th, YouTuber Boomstick Gaming posted a video titled, "IGN copied my Dead Cells review. What do I do?" He had noticed some similarities between Philip's reviews and his own, published in late July.
Dead Cells takes a progression of a Metroidvania and integrates it into this procedurally generated action roguelite.
It takes the progression system of a Metroidvania and transforms it into a procedurally generated action roguelite.
This combat system...
They all do this so much. They just, like, they want to produce videos so fast that they just go straight up copy the script of other videos and rehash it like 2 hours later. And you couldn't pay me to be that kind of biter. Come on, man. Do the work. Like,
Welcome to Stormwind. Took a long time.
Must be nice money, I guess. Must be
So are
nice
you
money.
visiting, or are you
One of
here
the
on
most
business?
rewarding representations of 2D combat
Best
of the
deals in
entire
all of
genre.
Stormwind.
Like one of the things.
Won't find
Okay,
any
so
better.
this
Now,
this
what can I help you
channel,
with?
this channel will sometimes be, like repetitive in terms of how I start my videos and such, things like that. But it. Oh wait, already known. Oh, for cooking one. Yeah, that's cooking one. Yeah. Do I have a fishing pole? Yes, I do, but I don't have shiny baubles. I'll put like 10 of those and get started fishing. I wish you hadn't come over here, because I don't want to hear you fish. It'll annoy me. Come over here.
They're fast, fluid, responsive, and hands down one of the most gratifying representations of video game combat I've ever experienced.
Dead Cells figures out an intriguing way to have your roguelite and Metroidvania experience.
They all
in
do
one
this.
by-
And like all the videos do this too. If you watch like all the reviews of a new game, you'll see that they all copy each other's scripts. They all say the exact same shit. They go to the meta. Or sorry, they go to the Metacritic. They read whatever the game blurb is there. They read it out loud. They go to the wiki. They read that out loud. They because they think that's what the game creator wants them to say, and it is. And then they go and usually they're just kind of a bad critic, and they'll just rehash the story or plot of the game, and they'll talk about the 5, which is like graphics, music, gameplay, replay, and like overall execution bugs and all that stuff. And then they close with like their opinion, which is like, oh, this is a great game if blah blah. And the only real work is that little bit of their opinion at the end. All the rest of it is this churn outable review cycle bullshit that's just the repetition of essentially the wiki page, the Metacritic, and other people's videos on YouTube about that same game. And that's sad because like when you're passionate about video games, you shouldn't phone in reviews. You should do reviews like Mortismal, where it shows that you fucking spent some time and really cared about that title. And you know the inside and out of it, and you thought about it at night. You woke up, in a cold sweat from nightmares about it, and dreamt about it for months while you write scripts about it, and you obsess, and you go back through like editing your fucking footage, trying to get like perfect footage of what you're talking about, or something that was wrong, or what you liked about a character, and then you know everything about the wiki and the story and the plot, and you completionist the game, and you know every inch and every fucking corner of it. And that's in my experience, those are the people that should be doing reviews, not these industry hacks that repeat each other's Metacritic fucking readouts and wikis.
on your failures and urging you to try something new the next time.
Dead Cells strikes a perfect and engaging balance between the Metroidvania and roguelite experiences by focusing on your failures and urging you to experiment each time you do fail.
Dead Cells only falters slightly with some repetition setting in, especially on the early areas of play sessions.
He is trying to start fights. It's kind of funny.
With some repetition, but
Yeah,
it's only found in
he's
earlier
dropping
areas
some
and
bombs here because if he actually lights these people up for how really parasitic they are, that could not bode well for a bunch in the industry. Plagiarism suddenly becomes this terrible subject, and everybody's on the hunt for it, and they're calling out plagiarism in the comments and shit, in the clickbait videos and all this, and their bullshit doesn't ride for 10 years like it did before. This could be really game changing for the industry, kind of what he's trying to do here, which is like, please, like, stop copying the fucking wiki in your fucking video and word for word copying everybody else's videos. It's like kind of weird. We need originality in this. It's more of that shit that I talked about earlier with Wings of Redemption. It's like why do you guys do this? You're not good at it, you know. You look at this like a job, and you're thinking about the percentages and how much money you can make. And sure, there is that side of it. I think of it like that too sometimes. But like overall, like you should have a passion, and you should bring something to the table, and you shouldn't be copying wikis and other people's videos to get your content out like some kind of fucking hamster loop machine. And I don't know, man, like that has cheapened the review cycles. It's cheapened the reviewers. It's cheapened the experience in the games. I worry sometimes that the reviewers don't really give the right impression necessarily. So the developers suffer a little bit on the reception, and some games get tanked because the reviewers didn't like the game. Like, for instance, like, I know for fucking fact that there's games out there that the reviewers both love and hate and treat like shit or love and rave about, that are either respectively good or respectively bad in the opposite direction. So sometimes they'll shit on a game like Dungeon Siege 3 until it doesn't even exist in the fucking public's mind anymore. But that's one of my favorite games. And it's weird, and they just shat on it. Anytime I've ever heard anybody talk about that game, they're like, it's a bad game. And I'm like, motherfucker, this is not a bad game. It's Squaresoft producing, Obsidian developed. They took a shot at turning Diablo into a fucking, like a Baldur's Gate 3, or Larian game. They made a Larian game out of Diablo, where you have choice in the story and all this and what happens and all this. And then it's 3D combat, twin stick combat, because it's on the controllers for 360. It was a 360 game, but it is a really, really genuinely good, like sometimes challenging twin stick shooter RPG with ARPG combat, and the execution, especially on hard mode, the execution of a really good roguelike almost. Like, you can get your ass beat in that fucking game. It's hard. It's a hard game. Kind of like WoW. If you pull two casters in, Dungeon Siege 3, you might get your ass handed to you because you can't get out of the fight. You can't go anywhere. You can roll out, but you can't run out and like reset combat or anything like that. And if the casters are just free shooting on you, you'll fucking die in Dungeon Siege 3, unlike Diablo or one of those games. It was like a weird 3D, really was like a 3D Diablo, and you can spin the camera and everything. But it was it had issues. Mainly the camera was the issues, because they made a 3D camera. They tried to like Obsidian tried to take on Larian's. Like, it's weird how Larian got the success with Divinity Original Sin 1 and 2, but I really feel like Dungeon Siege 3 was the actual attempt at Larian's world, and it was done by Squaresoft and Obsidian first. And the reception, for some reason, I think the world was really unsatisfied with Squaresoft, because they had just dumped Final Fantasy XIV on the world in like a hot shit in our laps. It was like the worst game ever released, and we were like, and I'm not kidding, you'll hear people talk about this is why they called Final Fantasy XIV A Realm Reborn, because when it first came out, it was like the worst game ever released. It was way too chuggy on the graphics. It wasn't fun. There was like almost no group play. You had to like solo everything, and it was too difficult. You would die at level 5 or whatever. The cap was like 20, and people were getting there in like 2 weeks, and but they were grinding like 50,000 mobs a day to do it, and not even joining parties, and it was just bullshit. And like the game just tanked and went tits up, and they had to completely rehash that motherfucker to be exactly like World of Warcraft, or it wouldn't have lasted. It would have died. And so they went back in the kitchen. While they were in the kitchen, they did some production on other interesting things in the 360 era, like the Kane and Lynch series, and the game I'm talking about, Dungeon Siege 3. And but they only produced it. They brought Obsidian on to develop, and you know, as a reminder, Obsidian is like the most trusted, beloved RPG company left. Kind of, they've even got higher esteem than say Squaresoft, because like they've only ever cut really fucking good games. The only game you could ever say anybody didn't like by them was Dungeon Siege 3, and I still think Dungeon Siege 3 was one of the greatest RPGs ever made. I'll play it on my stream. I think it's an amazing game. It's wonderful. It's got, I mean, the music's sort of weak and the story's sort of weak, but not that weak. It's not that weak. It's not. It's got a good story, actually. And as far as RPGs go, in my estimation, Jane Cassinder, she was a B word. And it's weird. Like the reviewers poo-pooed Dungeon Siege 3 because I think they had, like we all had, like kind of a bad taste in our mouth from Squaresoft, because they had just cut, they were spending money and time on stuff like Kane and Lynch and Dungeon Siege 3, which I think irked the fanboys because they wanted them to do really amazing Final Fantasy VII quality Final Fantasy games on the, during the 360 era. But what they did is kind of a cop-out, I must admit. They released my favorite Final Fantasy, which is Final Fantasy 13. I'll also play that game on my stream. And 13 is a really good game. And, well, I mean, I don't know. My favorite one now is 12, but 13 was my favorite after that. And then Lightning Returns, like X2 and I'm sorry, 13.2, and then Lightning Returns. 13.2 wasn't a very good game in my opinion. And Lightning Returns was, although it suffered from the Majora's Mask problem, which was like timing you all the time. And if you didn't move the story forward, bad stuff happened, and you could die out and be forced to restart the story and stuff. And like I did not like Lightning Returns structure, and also they didn't have experience points in the game, which I think was a crippling flaw. There was no experience points in the game. There was just going from one point to another. You could grind. I mean, you could get like gear points and get stronger, but you didn't have experience points. You couldn't really technically grind. It wasn't really like that, and the game really suffered from it. And it wasn't a grindy Final Fantasy like it should have been. The way 13 was. 13 was a grindy motherfucker, like the grindiest one. It's such a grindy game. 13. It just goes on forever. Just grind. And oh yeah, I'm out on the belts, and that sounded like something. What was that sound? Oh yeah, that is a Gila. He jumped in. I mean, he can't do anything to me, so I'm not full, am I?
Warp drive active.
Am I full? Oh, I'm full. Go dock, damn it. No, stop. Dock.
Docking
Just dock.
permission requested. Docking request accepted.
The milk helps. I didn't know how much it helped. It does. It helps my throat a lot. What was I gonna say? So yeah, Lightning Returns was a weak game that I bought twice and I like and I love and I never beat because it's hard to suffer through it because it suffers from Majora's Mask syndrome where you're being pushed forward by the stupid time system all the time, which is so annoying to me. That is not why I play video games. Some timer, you know. And so that was what Squaresoft did to the scene in the Xbox 360 era, PS3 era. And the fanboys were not happy with Squaresoft. They had dumped Final Fantasy in our laps, 14 in our laps, and it sucked. They didn't like 13. I didn't like 13X2. And they didn't like Lightning Returns. I did, but I also thought Lightning Returns was a crippled game. Like, crippled. Like, literally, no XP points kind of broke the game for me. It was like, why even make a Final Fantasy if you don't have XP? Like, XP is the core of Final Fantasy. I've never understood that. So, and so we were a bit disappointed with Squaresoft. So subsequently, when they wasted, quote unquote, wasted their time, is what the fanboys said. They quote unquote wasted their time on fucking, and I mean, I can go pull the Metacritic from one of my favorite games right now. I'm on the meta. Let's go look at Dungeon Siege 3. And you're gonna see like a better rating now as people realize how much better the game actually was than they said it was. Yeah, it's like a 72. People actually did like this game somewhat. The community didn't mind this game that much. It's like a 5.9. But when it came out, this had like a 40. This is a mixed review now because over the years it did stand the test of time. And one of the beautiful things about Dungeon Siege 3 is it has good co-op, like good 3-player solid co-op, like Secret of Mana. It's got really good, fun game of places. But after one more run through the game, you'll not really have the urge to go back, and that was the problem. It didn't have a lot of. I mean, it does have good replay value, but in my estimation, what made the replay value so good was that it had a spinnable camera, an endless combat generator system essentially, and if you put it on hard, it was unforgiving, like a roguelike. It was like really seriously unforgiving. If you didn't block, you would die. You like full-blown die. If you let hits hit you as the tank guy or the gun lady, you would straight up die. You'd die in like 3 or 4 hits. You'd be dead. So rolling around was important, and that cost resources that you had to worry about all the time. Healing was a pain in the ass heal over time system because the game isn't easy. Yeah, I found this game to be decent, but that is also because I do not know much about the series, you know? I know a lot about the Dungeon Siege series. I've beaten all 3 of them a lot. But it didn't push the envelope, but I think it did a lot of things really adequately. And the critic reviews were kind of low on it. A lot of people were like, yeah, like a lot of people were like, you know, they were like, the camera mainly was the biggest complaint. And yeah, I have really enjoyed this unexpected title. There wasn't a lot of hype about it, and at the same time, there's been a whole lot of exciting releases for me lately. That was in 2011. He liked it. You're looking for exciting romp through impressive-looking dungeons where you smash monsters, get loot, use tactics to win, and level up a lot of fun abilities. This game delivers that in a way that's more true to Baldur's Gate Dark Alliance than it is to either the past Dungeon Siege games or the Diablo series. It was a very Baldur's Gate Dark Alliance type game. I really like the game, and I own it. I got it for $1, and I might play that. You know, that's a great game. So but I'll never forget what the critics did to that game. Now, I played it on the 360, and I kept thinking, this is a really solidly good game that kids should enjoy for a long time. But it had its flaws that I considered made it kind of a crippled game. And the true fun in it was playing on hard, which I felt it was such a solid game that I was able to get my ex-girlfriend, the stripper, to beat it with me. And she actually liked it because it's got a universal appeal. It's got great universal appeal to it. It has an interesting story. It's fun to play. It's good. And and I stand by Dungeon Siege 3, but I watched what the critics did to that game, and it never recovered. And so I don't think the critics should be able to shit on titles that they don't even bother to play, and then rip each other off plagiarism style like this on top of it. They must be good at it, and they must be interesting, like Mortismo. Or I don't really want them in the arena. I don't want them copying each other like this. That we have that on YouTube bad enough as it is. Like I want I want freedom of expression from them, and I want them to talk about how maybe they got stuck on one part for like 2 days and actually didn't mind getting stuck on that part for 2 days and stuff like that. But they won't admit that because they've got like, they've got these egos, and they're also copying each other and trying to keep it brief and churning shit out faster than they can really perfect it. And all those problems, so it lacks their personal touch. And I watch these people like IGN phone in their reviews, and I wouldn't say they phoned them in, but they hired these professional writers that don't have the zeal for the game that somebody like a Mortismo has, or I don't know, Many a True Nerd, or man, I haven't looked into Many a True Nerd in a while. I used to watch John's work almost every day for a while there. I like Many a True Nerd. I think he was one of the best that YouTube ever created. He was a narrator. He's an orator. He has the gift of gab. He can talk about anything forever. And he reminded me a lot of Frasier. He's kind of blusterous like Frasier, and a bit of a snob, I think, and long-winded and a windbag. But I really like Many a True Nerd. I think he's one of my favorite streamers in the end. He had a huge influence on me. Without him, I wouldn't have had a concept of what to do in terms of long forms, and accept that I might have a long form reality. I watched what he was doing, which was like every month he was putting out like 30 like 2-hour videos or something like that. And they were all quality, and they were all edited, and they were all well done. And I think his wife does a lot of work on it and all this. And they have a good team, and she's on the stream sometimes. And I was like, oh, wow, this guy puts like 30 hours of content, good, solid content on YouTube, like every month. And it's not always like interesting because he's a long former like me. It's not, a lot of the stuff he's doing is sort of boring. He's often down some side hole in Fallout, doing some quest trying to show the world his superior knowledge of the wiki. But that man has the wiki for all those Bethesda games memorized. All of them, I think. Even probably Morrowind. So he has this superior knowledge of it. So I noticed he had a very formative effect upon me, where I could see he felt no shame doing some piece of crap Fallout 3 quest on Many a True Nerd, A Tale of Two Wastelands. And because he got sucked into A Tale of Two Wastelands, which is an experience I haven't done yet, but I kind of want to. That's Fallout 3 and Fallout New Vegas mixed into the same mod, completely melded perfectly. So you can just bring either game's loot to the other game's area and stuff, and the other game's guns to the other game's area, and the levels went across. So if you got bored of playing New Vegas, you could go play Fallout 3 and seamlessly and just warp over there. And then you could also, because the casinos were open in New Vegas, that opened up Fallout 3 a lot. And I actually wouldn't mind a full perfect install of what's it called, A Tale of Two Wastelands, because it never occurred to me, but the battle simulator that I'm looking for might have actually been A Tale of Two Wastelands in the end, where if I could tune up the mob spawns, which I believe I can, and run the game like the battle simulator that I'm trying to get, that feels like Fallout 76. We that game could be very good, because the reason I'm playing New Vegas right now, the reason I bought New Vegas for $5 was so that I could go gamble. And I think there's this appealing battle. There's one of the things I think that makes Rust super good is you can go gamble at the outpost, and the loot really matters in Rust. The loot doesn't matter in Fallout, but if you have a battle simulator that you actually really enjoy to play, and access to a casino at the same time, I think A Tale of Two Wastelands is a superior single-player RPG that should be in my collection, and perfected, perfectly modded. It's set up to play anytime, and I'll put it on my new hard drive that's sitting upstairs. I'll put the first game I put on it is A Tale of Two Wastelands. I'll install it tomorrow. And I think I think you have to buy Fallout 3 for that on Steam, but that's fine. I don't really mind it. And then I'll restart a new character, and I'll put mob spawners for Fallout 3 in New Vegas, so the game plays like a battle simulator, but it has endless story. I'm sorry, yeah, well, I mean, like, really, it's like an endless story between the two games. You've got like an endless story of single player campaign quality, like questing if you want it, or you can just go out into the world with your fast run speed because you're like modding the game, and you can just like play the game like Fallout 76 where you're killing everything, you know, and you have endless ammo, and you have all the guns in Fallout, and you know you're 1 through 8 keys, each one's like a different crazy weapon. And I thought New Vegas was the only game that I needed. And really, I'm not the biggest fan of Fallout 3, actually. I think it's a good game, but I think it's very dated. And while it's more content for the stream, I think maybe New Vegas might be enough. Like, sitting right here, or no, I guess I took it off my task manager currently, but sitting somewhere here is, or no, there it is, I think, actually. I think that is it. Sitting right here is Fallout New Vegas, and I modded that so it spawns mobs all day, and it's like an endless battle simulator. And I think there's like a huge amount of intrinsic value to an RPG that plays endlessly as a battle simulator with a really compelling story at the core of it, and you know, fully voiced NPCs and no limitations because you can mod it and change everything exactly to the taste that you want it. You can get the run speed. All the developer fuck ups that they ruined their games with aren't constraints in your game because you can just mod everything exactly how you want it. I think my New Vegas is modded perfectly now. I believe it is actually completely done. So you know, and I'm like 3 hours in, and I've been playing it. It's actually really good. It's a great combat game with VATS and all that. It's fun, and you have access to casinos, which is actually really cool. Because then, you know, if you can win, one of the beautiful things about, like, so the Rust games are kind of like skewed for you to lose, but the New Vegas games are actually real, like, poker simulators that you would find on like a cell phone or whatever. They're actually like just poker, you know. There's no skewing of the luck unless you do certain things. I think your luck affects it, but I don't think there's, like, you know, there's not much of the skewing. I think you can win each hand's like fairly fair, and if it's fair, I can make a lot of money really fast. If I can make a lot of money really fast, I can go buy the best, you know, gear and stuff in the game. But you know, honestly, my big hope for that was Starfield. But they didn't do the combat right. There was not enough good combat in Starfield at all, and I don't think they'll ever have a good mob spawner in that game. Maybe, but I kind of doubt it. Not for a while, anyways. And so maybe in a couple years there'll be a good mob spawner. But I've kind of given up hope on Starfield being a good modded experience, even sort of, not in time, anyways. Before Elder Scrolls 6 inevitably comes out. And I'm fairly sure Elder Scrolls 6 will be the battle simulator that I am looking for. If they move forward all those Creation Club mobs off of Skyrim, or I mean, really, I think it's actually Skyrim, but I don't know. Yeah, shit. I think part of the Skyrim problem is I'm running in the wrong resolution. The Skyrim combat was really good, especially like when the first person camera was done better. It felt like a rogue. It felt so good. And I had this whole team with me that actually do fight and do well. And I'm a frost mage, and it's fun as hell. And you don't have to focus on the fucking story. It's a battle simulator. I kind of want to move that back into my rotation again, but I don't know what all I need to do to fix that. Like, let's go see. I think part of it is, what's my timer at? I am at 11 hours and 40 minutes. I will shut down here in like 10 minutes. I'm not going back out on EVE Online. I'm going to shut it down. Good session today, though. I need you to not do that anymore, if you wouldn't mind. Thank you. And, yeah, this was a good session on EVE. We'll bail out here. I'm not going back out to the belt. And I think this was a good session on WoW as well. And let's go see if I can get my... Yeah, and I think I'm done on Final Fantasy 11 as well. Bail out this one. And let's go see what I can do to get... So I thought New Vegas might be a better modded experience because it has guns and it has gambling, but it's a much older, shittier looking game than Skyrim Skyrim Special Edition. So let's see if we can get my Skyrim running. I kind of doubt it, but I mean, maybe. I think it's fallen into a state of disrepair a little bit. I think one of the problems is I think I can go in here and kind of get some of this fixed. Yeah, it's the resolution's wrong. There. Maybe that's all it was, actually. I thought it might be harder than that. No, it's good. So, okay, well, let's see then if that's good enough then. Let's see how it feels. I have played this game for 210 hours. Jesus, see, the Battle Simulator did make it better for me. Now, you did not fire the game up for some reason. Oh, no, there it is. There it is. Yep, bordered, good. And make it big and center it. Yeah. Good. Oh, did you crash? No, you didn't crash.
Issue further, and then later that day confirmed he had been let go from the company. But was this the first time Philip had done this? Catching someone doing plagiarism
get some more
is
milk
difficult.
real quick.
Someone has to notice the theft, which means having also seen the copied work. And if it's anything obscure, that's quite unlikely.
There, I got it
if
running.
you catch someone plagiarizing once, chances are they rolled those dice a few times before and hadn't been unlucky yet. People started looking through his other reviews in case there was more. Over at Kotaku, Jason Schreier's article on the firing was updated to mention an anonymous tip, pointing out similarities between Philip's review of FIFA 18 on the Switch and the one on Nintendo Life by Chris Scullion. Philip's review was made for his personal channel before he was even hired at IGN, meaning he'd been doing this for a while. Scullion himself would later post a video comparing his review with Philip's, showing off the many similarities, and I'll link that in the description. But I want to zoom in on my favourite example. Philip tries to hide what he's doing by changing words around, and he does it really badly. In his article, Chris says compared to the non-Switch versions, the graphics are a good deal less detailed. Here's Philip's version.
However, when you get up close and get a good look at some of the character models, it's pretty clear that they do have a good amount of less detail than the Xbox One and PS4 versions of the game do.
It's pretty clear that they do have a good amount of less detail. No one would ever write that sentence on purpose. You only create that by trying to change something you stole. There's a great example here of the deeper problems that plagiarism can cause. Philip's review contains false information. For example, here when he talks about the game's Women's League feature.
FIFA 18 comes with the standard tournament and kickoff
Women's
modes,
League.
as well as the Women's League, which was officially introduced in FIFA 16.
There are no women's leagues in FIFA 18. There's women's football, but leagues are specific real-life organizations that do not exist in the game. Philip's plagiarism avoidance techniques caused him to reword a sentence so badly that he invented a feature that doesn't exist. While these discoveries were being made, Philip made the decision to record and post an infamous, quickly deleted video onto his channel entitled My Response. Not an apology, a response. Philip denied everything, took no responsibility, and told numerous lies in this video. At the time, this was criticized heavily by everyone for obvious reasons, but looking back on it while trying to understand this kind of behavior, it's actually really useful. This is worth looking at in a discussion of plagiarism because by being so poorly thought out, it's actually a valuable insight into how people react when they're caught and the different ways they try to cover their ass. When someone more competent than Philip uses these techniques in a subtler way, we can recognize them for what they are. Thanks, Philip.
There were a lot of circumstances surrounding it, but at the end of the day, I was the editorial lead on it, so if anything, that makes it my responsibility.
He claims there was a complicated process to making the review, with lots of circumstances. The point is to make you wonder what really happened, so you forget what happened. Another way of doing this is to be passive about the events, so it's almost like they happened to him instead of being something he did.
Like I said, I take full responsibility for what happened with the Dead Cells review.
Philip doesn't say, I take responsibility for what I did with my review.
For
He
what happened with
passively
it.
takes responsibility for what happened with the review. When someone tries to use language to imply what they did happened by magic, they make it pretty clear they're trying to deceive you.
I try to look at all resources that I have available to me before I start formulating my own critical opinions so that I can offer the most cohesive possible review. The bottom line is that what happened with the Dead Cells review was not at all intentional.
Even if whatever happened, it was an honest mistake of some kind. But the problem is, honest mistakes are easy to explain. Dishonest mistakes leave proof behind. Philip didn't unintentionally write a very similar review because he watched another one. He copied their words exactly and changed some of them to try to hide it. Hearing Philip try to pretend this isn't what he did means we're not just dealing with a plagiarist, we're dealing with a liar who has more to hide. Philip's next lie was he had nothing more to hide.
I was lucky enough to get noticed on IGN through my YouTube channel, which, if in case you're wondering, is in fact all of my own original work.
A truly amazing defense there. Even if it did happen, which it didn't, it only didn't happen once. But the goal is to preserve what's left of your reputation by getting people to stop looking for more. This behavior goes hand in hand with a special anger directed at the people who are looking.
So you can keep looking, Kotaku, and please let me know if you find anything. Which, by the way, their news editor, Jason Schreier, tried to imply that my FIFA 18 review was also inauthentic by claiming that I copied it from Nintendo Life, and that's just so not the case. I mean, maybe he was implying that if you have similarly opinionated reviews, then you're just plagiarizing, or maybe he's just trying to get as many clicks off of my name right now as possible, or maybe he just likes kicking people when they're down. I don't know. I mean, check it out for yourselves and you be the judge.
He's referring to how Jason updated his article to include that anonymous tip. Philip accuses him of deliberately attacking him for attention by reporting what he has done. The section about how absurd it is to suggest he copied Scullion's FIFA review is probably why Scullion made his video in the first place. It begins by showing this clip. Bit of an own goal there. By the way, Philip, that's a football pun. Philip is using the reporting on him as a bid to gain sympathy. Yeah, I did something bad, but really, the bad guys are the people trying to see what else I did. Not me, the guy who did all of it. This tactic takes a more direct form.
But one thing that I do know is that it's not very fun being the target of a gigantic lynch mob who wants nothing more than to feed into your destruction. The amount of hate and threats that I've been receiving on social media have been pretty staggering. And I get it, I mean, people are mad, and rightfully so. But it's one thing to go and harass me, berate me with hateful words and threats, and it's a whole other thing to look up my family members and spread hateful comments on their social media accounts. It's just not okay. I mean, not on any level.
Obviously, no one deserves to have their family members threatened over their plagiarism. And there is a valid conversation to be had here about how we treat people who we believe to have done something wrong. And it's really unpleasant seeing someone try to weaponize that and use it as a shield against criticism. He just got done shit-talking a journalist and trying to make him the bad guy, and lying about the FIFA review. Scullion has spoken about receiving a lot of abuse from Philip's fans during this period as a direct result of Philip lying like this, another potential reason he had to make that video. If you talk about harassment without being cognizant of the harm you are causing to others right now, you clearly don't give a shit about the problem you just brought up. Philip really didn't help his case by making a Columbo villain bet you can't prove it speech. You can keep looking, Kotaku was an especially silly thing to say, since obviously people did keep looking. Many more examples came to light. His Fire Emblem Warriors video was mostly reworded from one on Nintendo Wire.
Decimating mobs upon mobs of enemies with the simplest of combos, and tearing through forts and mini-bosses with some of the most flashiest and stylistic special attacks.
Most flashiest? His Samus Returns review was stolen from Engadget, and his Bayonetta 2 review from Polygon, and Jason Schreier seemed weirdly invested in reporting on all of it. In several videos, Philip just copied text directly from Wikipedia or other related wikis.
Super Mario Odyssey's theme is highly focused on surprises and travel, and the developers incorporated many of their travel experiences around the world. For instance, elements of the Sand Kingdom were derived from Kento no Takuro's
experienced during a trip to Mexico, and the Luncheon Kingdom's food aesthetics were inspired by Italy and other European countries.
The developers recognized that when traveling to foreign countries, something that really has an impact is the different currencies.
All of my own original work.
On October 10th, the apology video disappeared, along with 901,000 views worth of other videos from Philip's channel. For a small YouTuber, this means a lot of videos getting privated or deleted all at once. This is actually another important tactic that plagiarists use, to try and hide as much of the evidence as possible. Philip has successfully hidden the extent of what he actually stole in his YouTube videos. Many of Philip's videos are now considered lost media, referenced in articles about the plagiarism or in videos showcasing it, but not as actual copies that you can watch. This is obviously no big loss, but it sucks for me that there's not many archived copies of some of these videos because, like, now I have nothing to cut to as reference footage. It's just, now I just have to stand on my set and talk to you. His article about Octopath Traveler is a fucking doozy. It steals a bunch of shit directly from Jeremy Parish's review at Polygon. And let me just say, buddy, if you can barely string a sentence together, people are gonna know something's up when you're suddenly using words like extrudes. When this was discovered, Parish tweeted, "Dang, I got extruded right into the middle of a scandal," which is probably the funniest thing to come out of all this. But that's not the only thing he stole for this one article. It also plagiarized one of his co-workers at IGN. Words from Seth Macy's video review of the game made it in too. Here's some clips from Macy's video.
Both its battle system and aesthetics pay loving tribute to the Super NES era. While this isn't merely a modern retread of past classics, but a phenomenal homage with genuinely fresh ideas and a fantastically charming wrapper of old school meets new.
Seth was especially shocked by this, it seems like, and it's not hard to imagine why. To take game criticism and writing original material seriously, only to have someone a cubicle over take a hatchet to your stuff and collect a paycheck for it is so deeply insulting. Things were bad enough that IGN pulled the plug on almost everything Philip ever made for the site just to be safe, something I've never seen an organization have to do before. He even, and this is insane, did a video explaining the Nintendo Switch's HD Rumble feature, and his explanation is just stolen from a fucking NeoGAF post.
A normal rumble is just a motor which spins, creating a vibration, right? Well, HD Rumble uses linear actuators, similar to Apple's Taptic Engine, which is what they use for the new Force Touch stuff in the new iPhones and Apple Watches. See, I believe that these are different in that they are more likely weighted electromagnets.
You believe that? Holy shit. He copied some text from a forum directly into his script and just read it out. Why would you even do that? No, seriously, that's the question we're trying to explore.
Why work when you can just copy shit?
Why do people plagiarize? Philip is a great help in finding answers to these questions, because 8 months after all of this died down, he released a second apology. Well, arguably his first, since he didn't really apologize in the first one, but still.
Hey everyone, I'm not here to make any excuses or to try and justify my actions. I'm only here to apologize to the people that I've wronged.
He says sorry directly to several of the people he copied from, but to avoid making himself look too bad, he doesn't mention the forum post, or the time he stole from someone else at IGN, or a bunch of the other places. He also doesn't apologize for denying everything, pretending it was an accident, or accusing specific journalists of being out to get him by reporting on it. I think this points to what this apology is actually about, which is appearing more humble and honest to try and repair his reputation. Admitting to the truly embarrassing stuff, or the dishonest shit he said when he was caught, would just make him seem disingenuous. It's hard to come off as honest if the apology includes lying to your face in the past. He wasn't done making excuses either. 2 days later, he uploaded a third apology.
Hey everyone.
I'm getting deja vu from these videos now. In this video, he tried to explain why he did all this. He had insecurities about the quality of his writing and his fear of disappointing people.
I felt pretty confident with my video editing skills and my abilities to create visually appealing content, but I wasn't always confident with my abilities as a writer. And when I got that big break with this awesome gaming company, my insecurities were amplified by like 10 million.
Oh, thank you, number 2.
The expectations were higher. I really wanted to do
very
well,
nice
but
of you.
I was also really scared of saying the wrong
good company
thing or putting out a bad review.
Now, maybe it's because he's lied before and still wasn't owning up to the extent of what he did, but I simply do not accept this as the reason. Lots of people have anxiety about their writing. In fact, I'd say most writers do. Not many of them handle it by stealing, so anxiety and pressure feel like an easy excuse. From seeing almost all of Philip's videos, I feel comfortable in calling myself a Philip scholar at this point, I can tell you for a fact that he is bad at making videos. He thinks cinematic transition packs equal good editing, which is the reddest possible flag, but even in terms of basic content, the videos are just bad. His earliest videos are just news about the then upcoming Nintendo Switch. Or stuff like the top 5 ways to play the Switch? A console that no one can play?
The single Joy-Con method, and it's probably going to be the least preferred way to play the Nintendo Switch.
When the Switch was out, he branched out into reviewing accessories like carrying cases and stuff, and doing unboxing videos. Some videos are just summarizing Nintendo press releases. This is the literal definition of content. It's like it got squeezed out of a Nintendo branded tube somewhere. It's the most how do you do fellow kids energy I've ever seen coming out of a 28-year-old man. So he started doing the most egregious audience growth tricks for dummies you can imagine, like constantly having giveaways for subscribers. Philip's following didn't grow
Oh, come on, man, one shot.
Work. Those people don't exist. It grew from offering free shit if you subscribed. But I'm gonna give Philip some credit here and say at some point he recognized, correctly, that he didn't know what he was doing. I mean, if it's obvious to me watching them, it must have been obvious to him making them, right? So, what do you do if you know you won't get ahead without copying someone better? You copy someone better. And I'm not even talking about plagiarism here. Even the stuff that isn't stolen is derivative. There's this one guy called Nihongo Gamer who's done some pretty useful tech reviews, and one of them was of an arcade fighting stick for the Switch. It did surprisingly well, and he gives it a proper workout as someone who clearly knows their stuff with fighting games. A few weeks later, Philip coincidentally decided to review the same thing. But Philip isn't a fighting game aficionado, so his live gameplay footage is him playing Sonic and, Mario Kart? Making this review functionally useless as a review of a controller made for fighting games, but Nihongo Gamer also in the same video reviewed this Switch holder that looks like a little arcade machine. Philip coincidentally is also reviewing one of these in his video.
This game is so much better now. This makes this game so much better.
This isn't even plagiarism, it's just strange. Philip didn't know how to build an identity of his own, so he just borrowed the style and content of successful
He's a sociopath.
videos in an extremely cynical way. He didn't make these videos for the fun of it, or because he cared about making them. It was always just about chasing success by any means necessary, and when that didn't work out, he just borrowed even more directly and got into this mess. In a fairly recent interview, he's described himself during this period as having imposter syndrome. But that's wishful thinking, isn't it? There's a difference between having imposter syndrome and being an imposter. Objectively speaking, Philip pretended to be a reviewer and critic while actually just being a thief and a liar. But I think it's possible to reverse engineer this falsehood and arrive at its core truth. The explanation lies in a little thing he said in apology number 3. I consider it the most meaningful thing Philip has ever said. It's not true, but it's meaningful.
So I took from sources who I trusted and respected and I agreed with, and I tried to change them in a way that I would say it.
Philip claims he sought out reviews from other people he respected to steal and learn from. But, to be blunt, who the fuck is Boomstick Gaming? When this happened, Boomstick's channel had just over 10,000 subscribers. Barely anyone had any idea he existed. And look at the other places he copied from. Mostly random websites, niche gaming outlets, fucking forum posts. If you consider something so obscure you can get away with stealing it, you do not respect it. Philip copied these people because he thought what they were doing was beneath respect. Remember Caves of Steel? I told you it would come up again, you little bastard. You better not have forgotten. In the lawsuit between Ellison Bova and the studios, one tactic the studios used was to accuse them of being the real plagiarists, of ripping off Caves of Steel when they were writing Brillo. The problem is these writers were all friends who knew and respected each other, so they could ask Isaac Asimov what he thought of that.
So we went to New York. I've known Isaac for 25 years. And Isaac, in his deposition, said, I've known Harlan for 25 years. He said, you don't steal from your friends.
It all sounds so simple when Isaac Asimov says it. At the start, I briefly mentioned one of the many times someone's entire idea and thumbnail have been copied. The thief later flipped the thumbnail and changed the color of his shirt. Amazing. This guy's kinda notorious.
Oh, at least that's saved.
And there was a really notable encounter where he made fun of a guy by joking about how many subscribers he had. This comes off as generic former Vine star narcissism, but it's difficult to ignore that he specifically steals from people he considers beneath him, having a lower number.
Whoa.
If you're not as important, your ideas are up for grabs. In 2016, Melania Trump's speech at the Republican National Convention was found to have plagiarized one of Michelle Obama's speeches at the Democratic National Convention. The audience hadn't seen a speech given at the other convention, so none of them
Forgot
noticed,
about
but
that.
the media did later. The question going unasked at the time, at least for me, was why Michelle Obama? Her speech about hope and dignity and respect and dreams had nothing to do with being a Republican. They hate that shit. Why didn't the writer rip off a Nancy Reagan speech about killing the poor or locking up black people for using the drugs her husband gave them? Well, plagiarizing another Republican would annoy Republicans, whose opinion the writer actually cares about. If you respect someone, or want their respect, you generally don't risk a fight with them by jacking their shit. But if you don't like someone, stealing is almost like getting one over on them, isn't it? No one was ever fired or seemingly punished in any way for stealing a speech and pretending they wrote it. And that's because none of these people give a shit about Michelle Obama. They're probably glad it happened. If you broke into Obama's house and stole some of his silverware, most speakers at this convention would pay you a cash prize. Plagiarism is an insult, and don't people love to insult their enemies? Here's something petty I should have forgotten about but didn't. When Lukey Poo made his short-lived video response, while defending himself on the grounds he actually got the idea from someone on Twitch who saw my video, and they're definitely real, he still took the time to explain that he also didn't like I criticized right-wing YouTubers he was a fan of.
I thought H-Bomber was a relatively decent video creator. I disagreed and didn't like some of the stuff he did, like when he went after Sargon of Akkad and some other YouTubers.
This sat with me. Why was it so important for him to signal his allegiances like this? I think the point was to make his theft an act in a larger culture war. Even if he did rip me off, I'm the bad guy. I don't deserve to be treated properly, so if anything, it's good if he did. You don't steal from your friends, you steal from the guy who made fun of Daddy.
At this point, I'm convinced the only thing H-Bomber guy needs more than a testosterone shot and some estrogen blockers is a lesson in humility.
Okay,
Wow.
well, it does, and I mean
Who
this
the
as a compliment.
fuck
The most
talks like
fuckable
that?
twink I've ever seen in my life get off telling me how to manage my T levels. Is he speaking from experience?
Yeah.
The way Philip pivoted when caught to attacking his accusers feels all too familiar to me as someone who has received the same treatment from someone like him. There's this indignation to it. I'm better than you. How dare you tell me not to steal? What's emerging here is a social element to theft. Plagiarists seem to have this belief they are
shit.
better than
Oh,
their targets,
fucking-
more important, more deserving
Oh,
of
you fucking
credit,
scared me.
better politics, a better class of person. Your ideas are wasted on you. They'd be much better served in my videos. Other games people looked down on what Philip did with so much anger, and people from IGN continued to be aggressive at him for years afterwards, because they understand this instinctively.
Oh my
His
God.
actions essentially
Startled
said
me.
out loud, he thinks games writing is so worthless, it's okay for him to steal it. The IGN crew are especially entitled to be angry about Philip, though, because he did really damage their credibility. When your company produces plagiarized stuff, it damages people's faith in your institution and its ability to not do that, and it's really hard to get that goodwill back. This leads us, as all things do, to the Angry Video Game Nerd, Part E, Cinemassacre. The Angry Video Game Nerd is a popular series in which... I don't need to explain this. AVGN made James Rolfe a household name the world over, in cool households. Under the umbrella of his mostly one-man production company, Cinemassacre, James made other things too. One of these, and my favourite, was Monster Madness, where every October James would release a video every single day about an old horror or monster movie. I used to rewatch these whenever I was hungover in university. It always made me feel way better. There's an infectious positivity to hearing someone share something they genuinely enjoy. Good stuff. As the years went on and he got busy with other projects and having children. I mean, his wife had the children. You get it. Monster Madness took a backseat. Some years he only made a few new ones. The guy was busy, or maybe he'd lost interest in a project he'd done for over a decade at that point. And that's fair enough. But then Screenwave got involved. For people with better things to do, Screenwave Media is a YouTube network / influencer agency thing who work with various YouTubers, helping them produce content by editing their videos for them, assisting with writing, and helping them find sponsors. They apparently work with a bunch of channels in various forms, but they work especially closely with Cinemasica. The writing and editing of the AVGN videos became
shit, what the
weird,
fuck?
like someone else was doing those parts. The channel started making new types of video, which were like James standing kind of awkwardly in the corner while Screenwave employees discussed a movie. There was a Cinemasica podcast, and James often just wasn't in it. The guy whose channel it was became an optional side character. Oh, and everything became packed with sponsorships.
If you don't know, Skillshare
It got so bad, episode 200 of AVGN was split into 3 videos with separate sponsors.
Where did the dragon go?
Too many brand deals.
Oh, we're gonna have to make the episode 200 3 episodes because we sold too many brand deals and they didn't tell James.
Under Screenwave, Monster Movies became a different beast. They streamlined production by eliminating the writing. It became James and a rotation of Screenwave employees you don't know, and James didn't seem to know too well either, discussing the film and trying to come up with something interesting on the spot for 15 minutes. Some of these guys were basically ordered to be on the show by their bosses and seem uncomfortable being there, which makes these being shot on a dungeon set fitting. And you're constantly reminded why this was made at all.
Available now, US only. Release the Kraken!
The show certainly wasn't what anyone had been watching it for, and the creators appeared to notice, because in April 2021,
Oh,
it was announced
come
Monster
on.
Madness was coming
Fucking
back
one
for
shot.
real, with the old style of scripted videos featuring just James and his short and simple voiceover. Like the old days, but, you know, with Screenwave's help, so not really. Newt Wallen, a Screenwave employee, was enthusiastically tweeting about how he had written 20 of the 31 videos himself, with others writing the rest. The whole point was it was a guy passionately sharing his actual opinions, but that guy wasn't writing them. But some people were still excited. It was a pandemic year, we were all indoors, not much else was going on.
Be sure to check out Cinemassacre's Monster Madness around the world. 31 days, 31 countries.
October rolled around, and so did the first new video, for the film 28 days later. It was weird, like James was reading something written for him, which he was. But what really stood out was what he was saying. A guy who famously avoids politics and serious real-world events in his videos suddenly started talking about how the film reminded him of the horror of 9/11?
And when seeing the film today and being put into that time period, you can't help but think of 9/11 and all those TV images of Ground Zero and Baghdad being devastated by war.
It didn't take long for people to start Googling the words he was saying. A user named ZB123 posted a thread on Reddit showing a huge portion of the video's script was taken directly from a review in Film Comment, a fairly well-known film criticism magazine by Dr. Cecilia Syed, who is currently a senior film lecturer at the University of Kent. Let's compare and contrast, shall we?
Horror films are frequently interpreted as allegories of our realities.
Okay, that was quick.
Their fantastic or supernatural elements often spawn from symptoms of social and political tensions in a specific era. 28 Days Later is set in a post-apocalyptic Britain, which has been devastated by an epidemic that within seconds can transform its victims into crazed cannibal killers. Following a car accident, he wakes up from a 28-day coma. Finding the hospital abandoned, he walks out and wanders through the empty London streets. He finds that people have fled the country after the outbreak. Those who remain are either dead or become infected. The group sleeps in buildings, eats canned food, and abandoned supermarkets. 28 days later, aligns itself with the typical loss of individuality. It's interesting you can't help but think of 9/11 and all those TV images of Ground Zero.
Oh, did you crash?
Order is born from chaos, and then chaos is born from order.
It was as if Professor Syed's review had been killed and brought back from the dead in a new, tainted form. That's not how the zombies in 28 Days Later work. Okay, it was like her review was the patient zero of 28 Days Later reviews, and it infected the... This is pretty straightforwardly plagiarism. The angry video game nerd had just stolen a film professor's review of a movie. In true AVGN fashion, shit hit the fucking ceiling. What was going on? Initially, Justin Silverman, the lead Screenwave guy, claimed this was a result of a new person who was helping, accidentally mixing some notes into a script, and this would be fixed soon and all the other episodes were fine. The new person thing isn't true. The guy who did it had worked with Justin for like a decade, but I can understand trying to protect someone's identity if you believed they had just made a small mistake. Justin updated the page the video was posted on to say it was being corrected to remove some accidental plagiarism, whatever that means. So whoever did it, they successfully convinced Justin this was an accident. But it wasn't. There's the telltale red flag of the awful writing you get when someone who can't write tries to rewrite something they copied.
It starts with the usual tropes. Mankind's experiments go haywire, resulting in destructive results.
There's another way you can prove it wasn't accidental. You know, the other excuse we've heard before, how it just happened once and the rest of the videos were fine? They weren't fine. Reddit user Retired Fool went on the website the videos were being hosted on and found the second episode uploaded early. Most of it was from a review on ScreenAgeWasteland.com.
The movie opens with a shadowy figure with multiple hand attachments who calls in the boys, 4 men from a government agency trying to deal with an alien invasion in a small New Zealand town. Peter Jackson plays dual roles of Derek and Robert, who interact through the use of creative camera work and editing. So Jackson handles writing, directing, cinematography, editing, and special effects for the film. Derek is perhaps the best character in the film. He's bloodthirsty, clumsy, funny, and a little too full of himself. He spends a good portion of the film on his own, but Jackson manages it. He's got a good sense of physical comedy that comes in handy when Derek is dealing with a flap of his own skull that keeps allowing pieces of his brain to fall out. Bad Taste is a gloriously gory entry in the splat stick genre and a true cult classic. Watching it today, you can kind of see inklings of the kind of films Peter Jackson would prove capable of later on through the pacing, camera work, and sheer inventive energy.
So Day 2's video was also plagiarized. The Return of Monster Madness isn't going so well. We know James didn't write this, so who could it have been? Was it perhaps the man who was just bragging about writing most of them himself? Yes, it was. The rest of the Screenwave guys looked at the scripts, and many more examples were discovered. Justin confirmed several more were plagiarized, and Kieran, a video editor who later quit, claimed in a live stream that all of them were.
We went through all the scripts, plagiarized them all. They had multiple, like every single thing was plagiarized. They fucking plagiarized every single thing.
This is a tremendous amount of blatant theft, if true, but soon it became clear almost everything Newt did and said was copied. While I was looking for other stuff Newt made, I saw he was one of the speakers at the Roast of the Angry Video Game Nerd in 2013, and he was proud enough of this he uploaded his bits separately to a channel he was involved with. And just watching it without doing any serious checking, several of the jokes from this jumped out at me immediately.
Justin? I heard Justin was nervous before the show. He couldn't figure out what he was going to wear, either honey glazed or pineapple slices.
This joke is taken from a Gilbert Gottfried roast.
She couldn't decide between the honey glaze or pineapple slices.
Brent Vanderbrook is so deep in the closet, he's having adventures in Narnia.
This is a well-known joke from a 2007 Jimmy